Tell me, Vidya, what first drew you into the anti-landmine and disarmament movement in Sri Lanka?
Thank you for having me here with this program. Uh, in 1996, I joined with the Social Scientists Association in Colombo, uh, and there, I had privilege to meet a lot of academics, social activists, international dignitaries, international scholars, and also that time the height of the war. Also that time, so. Uh, Social Scientists Association SSA, a part of peace negotiations, all their director level members, secretaries, chairman, and the director board. So I had the privilege to associate with them. Uh, I was part of the Bradford University Peace Studies program. We had two centers, one in Vaunia, another one in Mathara. So I was the coordinator for the Vaunia Center. So those are influenced me to get into this sector, particularly landmine campaign, Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine. A senior activist from India came Sri Lanka in 1996 or 7. I'm not sure exactly the which year. Um, they had a meeting in Colombo. I was part of that meeting. As a volunteer, I went there. So then Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine initiated that time with that person visit from India. So then I was voluntarily on and off engaged with the campaign, but unfortunately the government security forces and the LTT that time, both parties were using landmine. We were not able to ban not using landmine. We convinced the both parties. Never happened until 2009. So the war ended in 2009. So soon after the war, my activism, directly, communicated to the president level, with our Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine colleagues, So we wanted to accede to the Ottawa Convention, Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, and also the Cluster Munition Convention. It's called Oslo Convention. Not only those two conventions, ratifying the Disability Convention, UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So since 2009, so we started campaign afresh, asking the government to accede into those two conventions and ratifying the UN Disability Convention. But it took more than, I think, 10 years, 7 years, Sri Lanka acceded to the Mine Ban Treaty in 2016, and then 2017, 2018 Oslo Convention banning cluster munition, and 2016 Sri Lanka ratified the UN Disability Convention. But in between we had lot of things to do, convincing the military, the government, the political leadership, civil society, uh, not only them, the general public and within the families. So they said the banning landmine, it will become a huge issue for Sri Lanka one day. If another war comes, how can we protect our military bases? So we had argument with them. We succeeded with everybody. So Sri Lanka shown to the world that landmine is not a weapon. You can win a war with that particular weapon, because the Sri Lankan military, the last stage of the war in the Mullatiu jungle, that was the biggest landmine land in the world that time. The LTT scattered landmine everywhere. So the military was able to go through all the minefields, And same with some years back, in I think 2005 was in Mulatiu army camp. So run by within few hours time the LTT took over Mulatiu military base. LTT, they took all the heavy weapons and everything. So that Mulatiu army camp, Sri Lankan military used all the landmine what they had, that particular camp. Because that was one of the bases, but never helped. So that was our one major argument. And landmine, who kills and injured? Mostly civilians. After a war, during the war. So after a war country like Sri Lanka, why should we have landmine? So our next argument it was we had internal conflict. Nothing to do with our neighboring countries. So they brought argument within the government, as I mentioned earlier, uh, and again within our friends, circles, family. Um, the this inhuman weapon that will bring a sad memories. You know, if a young child, a kid losing a leg, that create a lot of issue for everybody. It's a government huge responsibility. A child using a leg, sometime both legs, eyes. So we have to provide education, health facilities. It's high cost, and in country like Sri Lanka, we don't have that much facilities for disabled people.
So, how do you see your role as an activist and researcher differing from the humanitarian clearance agencies or government officials?
So both before the war, uh, I think the U.S. government that time, 2002, started demining work in Sri Lanka. So basically, they trained Sri Lankan Army Engineers Brigade. From that point up to now, uh, all the agencies close to, they work together. They are very, having very good friendship. So we had several organizations in the past. We had Swiss Foundation for Mine Action, and then we had two Indian demining organizations, Horizon Sarvatra and Danish demining organization. So that time many organizations work, but after the settlement, the demining organization, some of them left the country. Now we have Hello Trust Mac, two international and two local NGOs, plus Sri Lankan Army humanitarian demining unit under the Engineers Brigade.
So, how do you see your role as an activist is different from those officials or the agencies, clearing agencies? How do you make a difference?
Mainly two international organizations and the two local NGOs. Their clearance support comes from the international donor community mainly. I can say 100% they depend on international donor, except Sri Lankan Army demining unit. They get funding from the Sri Lankan government budget. So they are doing good job actually, and now the Hello Trust, they have a training center in Sri Lanka for international staff. So they are training, yeah, and also some of them, once they get the training here, they go other countries, mag operation in other countries, Hello operation in other countries. So there are opportunities for people work in those organizations as well. So I don't see any clash between any of these agencies. Of course, they have a competition for the funding after the US, they cut the funding for demining. So now the agency is also struggling to keep their staff as it is. Those are the issues they are facing right now. But Sri Lankan government, they give fullest support for those four organization working in Sri Lanka. All the administrative support, the clear, whenever they want to get the any clearance support for their staff, international staff members to come to Sri Lanka. So we do not see any issues from government point of view as well. Yes.
Nearly after 15 years of the war, how do landmines and ERWs still affect civilians in the north and east?
Yes, soon after the war in 2009, there was a high casualties uh, because that time most of the lands were contaminated with landmine and explosive remnants of war. So high rate of casualties. Uh, Fortunately, the UNICEF, they supported few NGOs based in the north and the east about the mine risk education. That was a very successful program. We are so proud of that program. So because of that, now we can hear hardly mine victims, gradually decreased compared to Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand borders, and again the Middle East countries. They reporting hundreds of landmine victims. In Sri Lanka's case, very less now. So we are so fortunate for that.
Could you share some stories or data on how mines and cluster munition continue to shape displacement, injuries, or livelihood?
So I could say that Sri Lanka is not contaminated with cluster munitions, only landmines. So I don't have the exact data right now. That time, because of that the issue, we had many people getting injured. So because of that, they had no opportunities for engage with their livelihood activities, and also their other uh, you know uh, important engagement. Their children going to school because school were not open that time because of the school's area contaminated with landmine, and religious places, most of the important areas were contaminated. Gradually it's removed by the agencies and the Sri Lankan military. So now they are having opportunities to starting their own work and the businesses and engage with other activities.
You mean to say that it's better now?
Of course, compared to soon after the war and today, it's a different story. It's a success story. Sri Lanka's mine action program is a success story, contributed by many factors.
Can you elaborate legislative opportunities in terms of mine action? What are the articles and what is deals with?
Yeah, very important question. We were campaigning Sri Lanka to accede to these two conventions: Oslo Convention banning cluster munition, Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel mine ban, plus UN Disability Convention. Those are the three conventions we convinced the government to accede in and ratify. So, as I mentioned early 2016, Sri Lanka ratified the UN Disability Convention, and 17 Ottawa Convention, 2018 Oslo Convention. So, with that, after the accession, Sri Lankan government in 2023 passed the act to the parliament to implement the Ottawa Convention in the country. That is very, very important. Now we have a law in place. So it's anti-personnel mine ban act. No, that is convention. Article 5 talk about the completion of the work. So with article, can I Yeah, Article 7, it's talk about uh, a, a transparency measures. So the very important thing is the Article 5, destruction of anti-personnel mine in mine areas. That's where we have a deadline, 10-year deadline. So now we are reaching 10-year deadline very soon, 2028. So we will not be able to finish the demining activities in 2028 according to the current data. So now operators finding new land contaminating landmines. So it will take some more times. Yeah, so that's why article 5 talk about. Article 7, it's all about transparency measures, how the government going to um, uh, um, deal with the implementation of the convention. Yes.
Do you feel the voices of landmine victims and affected communities are adequately represented by policy making?
When it's come to clearance, mainly the government and the stakeholders within the mine action program. When it's come to disability, victim assistance, that's where their role is very important. So in Sri Lanka's case, mine action victims getting very low support. They are not segregated by the government any sector. Now only the new government they wanted to help them, and now National Mine Action Center recently had a survey how many landmine victims in the war affected areas, and they looked at the housing issues. So fortunately, the Mine Action Center comes under the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing. So it's easy now to convince the political hierarchy how important victims getting benefit.
So, when we talk about victims, civilian victims and the war persons involved in the warfare are differently treated in the terms of victim.
Of course, you mean the military landmine victims and the civilian. Of course, so military mean they are paid. They are getting a salary or pension. So until they reach that pension time, they get the salary, and they get the pension. So they have support from the government health service. They have a hospital from the military. But civilians also we have the.
You mean to say the soldiers who got injured in the war field by landmine are comparatively hurt than the civilian victims?
Of course, because they get the income, monthly income they get, and they get the other facilities from the government, but not the civilians. This is why, we raised the issue not to use landmine. Not only Sri Lanka, anywhere in the world, it's the same thing. In the Korean peninsula, now the South Korea, it's a rich country, but Koreans not getting, civilians not getting support from the Korean government. The only the Korean military getting support from the government. Same like in Sri Lanka, there are mine victims in the north, children. So they should get they are the priority. They're going to school, and the schools are not equipped with the accessible support, and then they don't have the parents not having enough livelihood support to support them. So there are a lot of socio-economic issues in the north and the east landmine victims.
How widespread was the use of cluster munitions in Sri Lanka's conflict, and what evidence exists?
So there is no evidence at all. If a country use cluster munitions, the sooner it used, only the 40 to 50, 45% get exploded, but remaining that other 50 remaining on the ground. But in our demining organization, we haven't found any cluster munitions. So it's a different way of demining. the cluster munition, not like landmines.
But in your report, you mentioned the use of unknown.
Which report? There is no such a report mentioned. No, no.
No, one of your.
There was an allegation. There was an allegation that Sri Lankan government used cluster munition, and also the same way some people raised that maybe the Indian IPKF when they were here, they may have used that cluster munitions, but not the Sri Lankan. Sri Lankan government, they imported landmine from Pakistan, Belgium. So I think almost every landmine used by the Sri Lankan government not produced in Sri Lanka, we imported, the government imported. The LTT, they produce landmine here. So not the cluster munition. Yeah. So and another thing, the cluster munition convention came into effect in 2010. So war ended in 2009. You know that if we not agree anyone using cluster munition anywhere in the world, but Sri Lanka not use. But when it's come to legality, you know, at that time there was no such a convention. It's 2010. You know, then after that only the people can, you know, fingering at them that, you know, there is a convention. You are if you are a party to it, if you violate it, it's a different question. So the convention came in 2010. So Sri Lankan war ended in 2009. Yeah.
Sri Lanka acceded to the anti-personal mine ban convention. From your perspective, how meaningful has implementation been since then?
Very good. We are very happy. The government looked at it and acceded it, and in a very positive way. And not the government, people of Sri Lanka are benefiting it now. It's good for the government, any government. After 2018, several government came and, you know, to power. So from top to bottom, political leadership supportive of the Ottawa Treaty implementation, and during the, you know, we had a big economic issue and the political issue. So that time also we were continuing mine action program, and also Corona time, you know, we had some difficulties, but our agencies and the Sri Lankan military continuing mine action program, demining work in the north and the east.
Do you believe that Sri Lanka will meet its Article 5 obligations under the mine ban treaty?
I don't think, because now we are finding new minefields, so we will not be able to complete within the time framework before 2028. We need to go for an extension. So depends on how many mine areas to be cleared.
So how dependent is Sri Lanka's mine action program on international donors and humanitarian mine clearing agencies?
So as I mentioned earlier, all the 4 NGOs work in Sri Lanka depend on international donor funding. So the recent US government cut down entire mine action program funding for Sri Lanka, not only Sri Lanka, for the entire world. Sri Lankan mine action program depended on 50% from US government funding.
How politicized is mine action in Sri Lanka? Do political rivalries or centralization of power ever delay or compromise the process?
No, mine action program, nobody politicizing it or, you know, take advantage. So I can say always mine action program, it's not a corrupt, but other program, you know, we have a lot of issues. Mine action program, very transparent and accountable. So it's from the inspection, like that time. So it's continuing. Nobody can claim it that they are party, you know, supporting it. No, it's a government support. Yeah.
No political divide or ideological divide.
No.
So every party want this to be get over.
Yes. Even we as campaigners, advocate, on the treaty, we say not to politicize mine action program. So we want to continue as it is. It's a people's program, you know. It's a nature,
So it remains a political program.
non-political program. But the governmental always, any government comes to power, they take the leadership.
So what role the military continue to play in mine clearance, and do you see this as been helpful or a problematic?
Very helpful. Sri Lanka's mine action program initiated with the Sri Lankan army. So that particular humanitarian demining unit, throughout they are supportive of the mine action program.
So how big is the military program compared to other humanitarian mine?
They are the biggest deminer.
So bigger than other two age.
Yes, they have a big capacity, and they are not depend with the international donor support. Now Sri Lankan military has to play a crucial role after clearance of the country. Then it will come to residual contamination. Then those 4 NGOs will not going to be here. Sri Lankan army will take care of this responsibility in future.
Can you elaborate what residual contamination is?
So anyway, like we can't guarantee that anywhere in the world, once you clear the minefield, it's 100% cleared. There are some areas, 1 or 2 remaining land. Recently, Mozambique declared mine-free country, but now they are in the residual contamination period. You heard time to time in Germany, they find Second World War bombs when they dig the land. So it's remaining in, end of the day, human has to dig to the, earth.
So in Sri Lanka's case, what types of munitions were used and what remains in the land?
Mainly landmines, rocket launchers, we can see they are, clearing, both parties used. And anti-tank mines, claymore, yeah.
So these are the.
These are the, yes, yeah. Not like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, they had all sort of weapons, heavy bombard, dropped from air. Not in Sri Lanka, no.
But Sri Lanka is comparatively smaller in land mass to other countries, right? Like Laos and
Yes, of course, yeah.
compared to Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So within this land, it looks huge, I think.
Yeah, but the contamination and in the jungle, that is the issue, here. Even though those countries contamination in some areas in the jungle, but now we have opportunity. We have flat land, not mountains in Sri Lanka, in the north and the east area. If it is in a mountain area, what happened? It's a difficult time. But we are in a very good situation now.
How these mines laid in the forest, jungle areas are affecting wildlife?
Yes, this was the one time, the war time we raised this issue not to lay mine in jungle areas, elephants, leopard, other wildlife. So, but there were some incidents happen in the past, not anymore. We heard that, one elephant lost a leg, and the wildlife department and the other authorities, they treated that particular elephant. So that was some, but not in recent time. Yeah.
So in the development perspective, the land released after the clearance of landmine, has it economically helped the people? How it is helped?
Of course, because they
Explain how it has helped.
soon after the war, most of the people, they were in certain camps, they brought to certain places. So then the mine action program very helpful to go back to their original lands. So sooner they go back to their lands, but they were not able to go back to their livelihood program because most of them depend on their agricultural work, fishing work. So they had some difficulties. Now that difficulty, I think, 80% finished, very few remaining. Still there are certain areas. So that help a lot. There are socio-economic activities, particularly children going to school, and there are health matters, and again agricultural activities. Now people still there are some areas very important, but the jungle also very important, because certain people depends their livelihood with the jungle. They need firewood. Some people going to collect honey, bee honey. So some people, of course, that it's illegal, but they do hunting in the jungles. That's their livelihood. Yeah. So those are the people living in rural areas, how they live with their lands, their area. Yeah.
How has the humanitarian demining effort or mine action plan has worked broader post-war reconciliation in Sri Lanka?
Yes. So that's why we campaign before acceding to the mine ban convention. It's part of the reconciliation program. Once you accede to the mine ban treaty plus ratifying the UN Disability Convention, and also tell the world that Sri Lanka not use cluster munition. That's also part of it. So after acceding to the mine ban treaty, international donor community increased funding for Sri Lanka. So that because of Sri Lanka's commitment towards that, Sri Lanka will not going to use landmine anymore in future. Same with cluster munition. So the donor looked at in a different way after acceding to the two convention and ratifying the CRPD. It helping a lot.
What role can civil society, NGOs, or activists like yourself play a role ensuring Sri Lanka remain accountable beyond 2028?
So we want to see the until removing the last mine from the earth, Sri Lankan soil. So beyond that, we will continue our advocacy, because the law, the anti-personal mine law in country should continue in the future, and same now we are advocating government to pass the law on cluster munition through the parliament. And very important, disability convention. Though we ratify the disability convention in 2016, up to date Sri Lankan government not able to pass the local law to implement the disability convention in the country. Last week in Geneva, Sri Lanka announced that Sri Lanka going to present the bill to the parliament very soon. And week before, I had a telephone call with the subject minister about the matter. He also promised me within another few months' time. He said 1.5 months' time we'll present the bill to the parliament. That is very important, not only for the landmine victims, but an entire disabled community in the country. That include everybody, their socio-political, economic rights. Yeah.
What role do you think will Sri Lanka's mine-free status play play an impact on South Asia's disarmament scenario?
Yeah, so our campaign not only for Sri Lanka, so we campaigning other neighboring countries to become party to the conventions. So in 2018 we went to Maldives. Maldives that time they party to the Ottawa Convention, not cluster munition, and they became a party to the cluster munition. And also we encouraged them to be party to the nuclear ban treaty, total prohibition of nuclear weapon. So we are campaigning nuclear campaign as well, and also autonomous weapon campaign, banning killer robots. So in the region, and also we are advocating Bangladesh to become a party to the cluster convention. And again Nepal, we looked at the smaller countries, India and Pakistan. They always claim that they have border issues, but we question the Indian and the Pakistani government both. So end of the day, not the military getting caught up with landmine, mostly the civilians. So it's a huge cost for the government use of landmine in even in the borders to protect their borders. So look for the alternative.
Why was the previous deadline of 2022 was not achievable in making Sri Lanka a mine-free country?
2028. As I mentioned,
22, the previous deadline. There was a previous deadline, no? That was
no, according to the convention, 10-year period. So
that was set as 2022. I think this was a newly set.
no, that is Sri Lankan government. One time they declared that we can finish it, but we were mentioned that we mentioned to the government we will not be able to finish 2022. But according to our convention obligation, Article 5, 2028.
So when was this set? How many years ago?
We became a party to the convention in 2017. So from 2017 onward, 18 became effective with the convention, and 2028 is the deadline, 10-year deadline.
So there is a allegation that even Indian peacekeeping force laid lot of landmines in Sri Lanka. Is it how much it is true?
Yeah, it's claimed that Indian peacekeeping force also use. We don't see that much they use landmine.
So can you differentiate by seeing at the mine who laid what?
So mostly Indian mines hardly we find, So mostly we find the LTT and the Sri Lankan military use mine. So Indian, I don't think now we don't hardly find Indian use mine. Yeah.
But there were.
There is an allegation. I mean, they say that they use it in Sri Lanka. Even I mentioned that cluster munition, So those are the allegation unable to prove, without any proper scientific investigation, independent investigation.
Currently, there are increased conflict around the globe. Why do you think countries are not learning lessons of peace, particularly having so many examples of legacies of war continue to arm people even after the war ends?
It's depend, mentality of the politician, the governing parties. War means we experienced that war. Internal conflict we had nothing to do with any neighboring countries. So we suffered from the south one time and the north. So imagine if we had a war with another country. So I don't think we will not be able to come up with all the issues for another 50, 100 years time. So internally we had 30-year war, still we are struggling. Still we haven't, addressed certain root causes for the conflict we had in the north and also the south. Still there. So it takes some years to heal those problems and addressing the root causes. So it's a political game, Some people want to arming. We are advocating them to not to arming, it's disarming and increase a human security. Not the national, yes, we respect the national security. Once we increase the human security, it automatically benefit in the national security. So putting more money into health, education and public transport sector, people are more comfortable, having good jobs, good education. So we had the issue with that and addressing the other political issues. So not going for a war, not taking arms, those are civilians to arms against the state. The South Sinhalese took arms against the state, the North youth took arms against the state. The failure of the political failure. So internationally also what we looked at the power struggle.
What is the ordinary Sinhala people feel about landmines or landmine victims or infected areas in the north and east?
So no one, not only Sinhalese, no, all nobody wants to go for a war. But when it's come to political, interference, people mindset going to be different. So some people, as I mentioned, usually claim that if we sign those treaties, if another war comes, we will not be able to protect our military bases. It's from the south. As I mentioned, my friends, my families. That's it's a struggling. It's very difficult to convince people. Some people they still in like they are in a frog in a well. They don't look at the world. What's going on? War never brings positive news. It's always negative news. So anywhere in the world, the war means destruction. Destroying properties, humans. Yes.
So according to you, landmine is one of the war legacies continue to bring back the memories of the old fight.
Yes, to some extent, because somebody suffered from a landmine until he or she died. It's in the mindset and within the family. Legacies are there. That's why we want to heal them. So we want to compensate, and hurt their voices. So look at the Second World War, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. We still talk about it. We, commemorate that event. It's not celebration. So we should not do another nuclear attack anywhere in the world. It's generational. It's in our hearts and minds. Yes.
Anything else you want to add?
For the Asian region, not to use landmine by any of our regional neighborhood. So Sri Lanka going to be very soon declare mine-free nation. We encourage India and Pakistan to adhere using landmine, not to use landmine in a civilian populated area, and also Bangladesh, Nepal to become a party to the convention. So then in South Asia becoming a mine-free region, it's our dream.